I can't compare a guy to Fred Warner and then at number 2 overall be like, yeah, nah, let's pick an edge rusher instead. Like, if I honestly think that this guy has Fred Warner potential, it's so hard for me to not select him.
Following the NFL Combine, which prospects are rising and who's falling? What to make of a recent Jets trade and why the draft forecast might suddenly look sunny. Plus a mock draft with Trevor Sikkema. Now boarding starts in 3, 2, 1. Let's bring in Tampa Bay Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus and the National Football League Stock Exchange podcast. You wear so many hats, and there's so much to get to right now. How much did the NFL Combine play into player evaluations?
A ton. Honestly, I love a lot of different parts of the draft process, all the way to summer scouting, right? Summer scouting, you're building the foundation of what a lot of these guys are going to do. You're talking about them from a perspective of how much better they could possibly get, what we could see the upcoming year. Obviously, there's the game tape that we get during the fall and the winter. Then you get into some all-star bowls. Okay, you start to get maybe some official measurements of the Shrine and the Senior Bowl. But when the Combine comes around, that's when a lot of stuff becomes official. You get the official measurements for these players. You get some word on some official medicals of what could be their health status going into the league. And then, of course, you get the testing as well. And there's a handful of players that even last week, had some overall athletic questions who answer those questions emphatically, and that's when we get to the big-time risers up these boards. So I love the Combine, man. I know some people think, it's the underwear Olympics. They're not wearing pads. It doesn't matter, but I really do love it, and I think that there's a ton of value to take away from the NFL Combine, even if there's no actual football being played yet.
We're saving the best for last because we're going to end today by getting to your 2-round mock draft. Interesting trade last week at the NFL Combine. The Jets bring in T'Vondre Sweat from the Tennessee Titans. We know he is a mammoth space eater, 24 years old. Jermaine Johnson reunited with Robert Saleh with the Titans. Does that make edge even more of a priority for the Jets in this draft?
I think it does, right? Because we've talked about some potential scheme and front changes for the Jets, and that was obviously going to be the case, right? Because you look at going into last year, and really how the Jets have been built over the last couple of seasons. Certainly when Robert Saleh was there, he's much more based out of that even front 4-down defensive lineman type of base defense. And Aaron Glenn, I think that, there's certainly some of that, but Detroit was multiple in a lot of the ways that they did things, so you weren't sure exactly what you were going to do. But having Quinnen Williams as your main guy, he's a 3-technique defensive tackle. So when you have when the strength of your interior defensive line is at the 3-technique position instead of maybe the edges or like a nose tackle type, you're going to build your front around that player. Well, an even front is the way that you do that. So with Quinnen no longer on the team, it really gave them the opportunity this past offseason to take a good hard look at the front 7 overall and say, what's our best course of action here? And it just feels as though they're gravitating more towards those odd front sets. Of course, every team in the NFL is very multiple in what they do. But when you have a true nose tackle now, the way that T'Vondre Sweat is, that allows you to play some traditional or even variation forms of that 3-4 defense. Yes, I do think that it raises the allurement and desire to get a certified outside linebacker type of an edge rusher on this team, knowing that they now have T'Vondre Sweat to play as that true nose tackle for an odd front defense.
All right, Trevor, we're in March. That means the madness is here. Pro free agency begins next week. Right now, whom should the Jets consider at number 2?
So at number 2, of course, like you mentioned, like pre-free agency, we'll see kind of how they fill out the rest of their needs and the rest of the roster here in a couple of weeks, over the next couple of weeks, I should say. I think there's 3 players that you consider. Technically, I would consider 4 players, but the 4th player is Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State. I'm just not sure he's going to get considered at number 2, given how crazy athletic a lot of these defensive linemen were. So I'd consider him at 2, but really I think the big 3 are Arvell Reese, David Bailey, and Sonny Styles. Yes, I would put Sonny Styles in that conversation. I think the linebacker conversation of, he's just a linebacker, it's lower positional value. I don't believe that. When you are as good as Sonny Styles is, when you have the size that he does, the length that he does, the explosiveness, and then Eric, his Indiana game is the best game that I've seen of any prospect in this entire class. Doesn't matter. I mean, the way that he was playing in that game was unbelievable. I don't say this very lightly, but this is a player who could have a Fred Warner type of impact for your defense. And when you get to say things like that, that totally puts that off-ball linebacker position into that top tier positional value for what he can do for the rest of your defense. So I think that you consider him, and then the other two guys. Arvell Reese said at the podium at his combine sessions that he wanted to be viewed as more of an edge rusher and an outside linebacker than necessarily an off-ball type of a linebacker. And so with that being the case, of course, him and David Bailey, the top two athletes at the position in this class, they're going to be in consideration there as well. I love Rueben Bain. I just don't know whether or not the Jets are going to consider him now if they want to go more of that outside linebacker type of edge rusher. He is, I probably should have said at the top, another guy that I would consider, but I'm not so sure the Jets are going to, given what their scheme is hoping to be this upcoming season. So I would say the main three that you'd consider here are Arvell Reese, David Bailey, and Sonny Styles at number 2 overall for the Jets.
All right, did Styles surprise you in Indianapolis? Because you've been talking about that game tape against Indiana for months now, saying this guy is a great player. He was so impressive at the podium. What about the measurables and what he was able to do in drills?
Yeah, I mean, yes, even for a player who I already had sky-high expectations for him to live up to those and even exceed those in some ways just goes to show what a special prospect this guy is. There's a chance that he ends up as my number 1 overall player in this class. I think he is that good. And, you know, you see him at Ohio State, all right, you know, they list him around 6'5", 240 pounds, but we know schools can sometimes lie about things like that, you know, fabricating a little bit like a dating profile, make sure that they're rounding up on all of those numbers. But he showed up a legit 6'5", a legit over 240 pounds. His 43.5-inch vertical jump was the highest mark of any player at any position since 1999 who weighed in at over 240 pounds. So he's got rare air athleticism, not just for the linebacker position, but any athlete that has come through over the last 25 years. And any time that you could say that, that's truly a special player. Then sort of the intangibles that you kind of were talking about there, listening to him at his podium session, how he just commanded the room and how just I cannot find anybody that I'm talking to, you know, whether they're in the league or covering this from the media side, who has anything negative at all to say whatsoever about who he is also between the ears and who he is as a person. This is a true leader type of a player and somebody who could bring everything to the table at that spot.
Speaking of between the ears, what do you make of Ty Simpson and what he was able to do in Indianapolis?
I like Ty, man. I really do. I mean, halfway through the college football season, I had Ty Simpson as my QB1 in this class. And then, you know, after that, he started to struggle. That Oklahoma game was a little bit of where a lot of the struggles really started from him in the middle of the season. And I know he was going through injury and he was playing through injury, but man, the first half of the year, and you got to remember, this is his first year as a full-time starter, and what he was at the beginning of this season was really impressive. He's somebody who knows how to hang in a pocket. He could play under center. You know, he can go through all sorts of reads and progressions and eventually even getting to backside concepts of certain routes on plays. He's making protection calls at the line of scrimmage. He's identifying where the Mike linebacker is, where pressure's going to come from. He knows where his hot reads are, and the more that he plays, the more that tells me that he's going to get full freedom to be able to check to different plays, change different route concepts with his receivers. I think that between the ears, this guy's got starting caliber NFL potential. I really do. And I really liked what I saw from the on-field portion of Ty Simpson's day. Obviously, throwing at the combine, it's not the biggest deal in the world. It's a very small piece of the pie when it comes to their scouting report. But there is something to getting plopped into a random environment, new receivers, new stadium, haven't practiced there before, and to look as clean and as accurate as Ty Simpson did, especially throwing deep to a lot of those different receivers. So I know it's a small thing, but it really did impress me how he was able to go out there and throw the football in Indianapolis.
We're not going to hold you to this, but come draft weekend, how many quarterbacks are going to be selected in the top 2 rounds?
I think it's still just going to be 2. I do. I think that it's going to be obviously Fernando Mendoza. We believe firmly that he's going to go number 1 overall. I think Ty makes it somewhere in the first round. I think mid to late first round is where we're going to land on Ty Simpson. I don't know, obviously, what destination it's going to be yet, but I feel as though he's going to get drafted somewhere in the first round. Garrett Nussmeier from LSU is the only other quarterback that I think is going to get consideration for that second round. And I think there's a world where an NFL team could buy into the fact that, his dad's an offensive coordinator, and he's been a long-time coach at a high level in college as well as in the NFL. Nussmeier's grown up around the game because of that. He understands the position very well. And if you want to believe a lot that he was also playing hurt this past season, which he was, then maybe you could just sort of believe into the best of what he is. But he's a little bit undersized, and I think that there's some physical, questions for him as well. If Garrett Nussmeier was exactly the way that he is, but he was built like Drew Aller, I think I'd probably tell you that he's going to make it into the second round. I think that I'd tell you he's going to be a second round pick. But with him being a little bit undersized of a quarterback and him already having some question marks around him, I'll say he's more of a third round guy than a second round guy right now.
All right, Trevor, let's build a star edge prospect from the 2026 class.
Okay.
I'm going to throw out different traits. You got to give me a different name for each of these traits.
Okay. All right.
Most powerful.
Rueben Bain. I think Rueben Bain is the most powerful all around. Is between him and Keldrick Falk from Auburn as well. But Rueben Bain knows how to be powerful, not just in run defense, but also in pass rush. So I'll go Rueben Bain.
I like that. Which prospect has the most ideal size?
Keldrick Falk. I think that's an easy one. I can go with Falk there. I mean, Falk is a legit 6'6", 275 pounds, almost 35-inch arms. And so the overall size, the length, all of that there for him is what bolsters his scouting report. So I'll go with Falk there.
Every edge needs explosiveness and speed. Are we going down to Texas for this one?
I think we are. We're going to Texas Tech for David Bailey. It's hard for me to not pick Bailey here just because of just some of the freakish first step reps that he has had, not just this past year at Texas Tech, but also at Stanford. I don't think he has the best bend in the class, but in terms of that explosiveness, that first step explosiveness off the ball, I don't think there's anybody better than him.
Man, you're good. That's a great transition. How about the best bend in this class?
Man. Who does have the best bend in this class? Man, I might go like a little bit lower than this. Like I think Akeem Messidor's got some great bend. I think Malachi Lawrence has some really nice bend out of UCF as well. Arvell Reese, man, he could dip his shoulder pretty well. I'll go Akeem Messidor, though. I'm such a big fan of Akeem Messidor and just the way that he can dip his body and get around all sorts of offensive linemen. I'll take Akeem Messidor here for Ben.
They say at the college level, sometimes you can out-athlete guys, but we know on Sundays you got to have counters. Who's got the best technique in this group?
Honestly, I think it's Bain or it's Akeem Messidor, and the reason why is because the Hall of Famer Jason Taylor has been coaching these guys for the last 3 years, and these two players are the most polished pass rushers in the class. That's why they are my number 1 and number 2 edge rushers to have this year. I'll go with Messidor, actually. I will take Messidor in this one because the relentlessness, the motor that he has, the overall length that he brings to the table as well. I think that he's got the pass rush moves, but I also think that he's got some really good counters to get off of blocks and continue his rushes.
All right, that was really good. That would be an outstanding prospect. I have a follow-up about Rueben Bain.
Yes.
How do you assess the measurables in terms of his arms?
Yeah, so it's a great question, right? And I think a lot of people are talking about Rueben Bain's arm length. And to be honest with you, I understand why there's the concerns, but I don't think that people are being fair to the whole conversation, or I should say the context of Rueben Bain's arm length concerns. Yes, sub 31-inch arms is not ideal for the position. When you're going one-on-one against offensive tackles, especially ones at the NFL level, these are guys who ultimately have really good physical gifts, really great length, and they're able to utilize those long arms in a lot of different ways. With Rueben Bain, when it comes to the negatives of that, the biggest negatives would be, do you win with length at the college level? Because if you do, then you're probably not going to be able to win with similar length at the NFL level if you have those lower measurables. But Rueben Bain doesn't really win with length. He's not, he's not trying to long arm people all the time. He's not trying to, his pass rush plan, his run defense plan isn't really predicated off of leverage via arm length. It's leverage via pad level and via lower body strength. So I'm not really worried about it there. And then also, you get worried about arm length when it comes to getting off of blocks. Well, Rueben Bain, again, doesn't really go through block deconstruction from a length standpoint. In fact, it is more of that smaller size and leverage point of getting off of those blocks. When you see Rueben Bain get locked up with these offensive tackles, let's say they actually get some hands on him, whether it's inside or right by the shoulders or whatever, the way that Bain gets off those guys is he gets a little bit lower, he loads up his quads, and then he hooks his arm around the offensive tackles for that famous Reggie White hump move where he then lifts those guys up and throws them over. That's how he gets off blocks. You don't need to have long arms to be able to do that. And in fact, I'd almost tell you that shorter arms might be better for doing something like that. So yes, to be a bigger and longer player at the NFL level in a vacuum is usually what you want. But the full context of who Rueben Bain is as a player, will he have some reps that he loses because he doesn't have that length? Yes. But I think the success levels and the highs, the ceiling with Rueben Bain still exist at the NFL level, even with those shorter arms.
That's outstanding analysis. I like production, and Rueben Bain was awfully productive on Saturdays. I think he's going to continue to be productive in the National Football League. Let's get to some fan questions. You know Jets Nation is so pumped about the draft, Trevor. Kyle writes in, what are your thoughts on where Ty Simpson might fall? I keep hearing teams love him enough to take him mid-round one, while others say teams see him falling out of round one entirely.
I think he is going to be in that round one range. I think that things start to get real interesting there at 21 with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I think there's a lot of other teams that also maybe back end of the first round, early part of the second round, who would be willing to jump back in to go get him, like what we've seen many years. But Jackson Dart's the most recent example with the Giants doing that last year. So I just have a hard time thinking that Simpson gets out of round one, given how much potential he has and how much people might trust, again, him between the ears and how he is going to progress at the NFL level. I think he's going to be a back end of the first round type of a prospect.
Yeah, people might have been sleeping on the safety class, but I don't think they are anymore. Andrew asks, best second round safety fit for the Jets?
A.J. Halsey's the first name that comes to my mind. He's one of my favorite safeties in this draft. He's got legit size at around 220 pounds, which is kind of becoming a rarity with secondary players, specifically at safety. Safeties used to be built a lot closer to, anywhere from 215 to 225 in the old days in the NFL, but now they're guys who are a lot smaller and a lot faster. So you get a lot of these safeties that are anywhere between like 195 and 210, honestly, now. But Halsey's a legit 220 pounds. He can lay the lumber when he's lower in the shoulder and really bring some hit power to what he's doing over with wide receivers over the middle of the field. And then he's a great ball hawk too. Does he have the best range as a true single high like cover one safety? No, it's not the best in this class, but I still think he's a really good athlete, and specifically in those roles where you allow him to be a little bit more downhill, you allow him to be in those robber roles over the middle of the field, those rat roles, cover one roles where he's sort of the safety that's kind of coming downhill, playing a little bit closer to the second level. He is somebody who I think could really be a great tone setter for you and somebody who could patrol and own that middle of the field.
Yeah, the Jets need takeaways, and that's a guy who got it done at LSU, no doubt about that.
His nickname was Mr. Give Me That, by the way, because of those takeaway skills.
I love it. Dylan asks, would Trevor trade number 33 or 44 in that second round for a veteran wideout instead of actually drafting one?
Ooh, I don't think I would. I don't think that I would. It kind of depends on who's available, of course. That's the ultimate cop-out that, I love to use when it comes to such hypothetical situations. But, if the right one maybe becomes available, you could think about it. However, I do feel as though the Jets are a team that is building. And with that, you feel like it's a couple, it's a year, 2 years, whatever it is, before you really start to get into that sprint of having that winning window. And I think that you would, as Garrett Wilson is getting through his rookie contract, you would kind of want another player next to him that you would love to get, that is a wide receiver 1 or 2 caliber difference-making player, but you get to keep them on more of a cost-controlled thing. So I think that the Jets obviously really have to figure out the quarterback position first. If they had quarterback figured out, I might be more in on that, given, okay, let's go get a proven guy out there. But until they really get to that point, I'm under the impression that this is still very much a build from the foundation, build from the draft type of a thing. So all kind of depends on the context there, but I think I would lean that I would not do that for a veteran wide receiver.
Yeah, lastly, Alex had 2 questions, but I'll just get to the second one. Some guys later in the draft that might fit with what the Jets are trying to do at the quarterback spot later in the draft.
So I talked about Garrett Nussmeier, right? Garrett Nussmeier, I think, is one of those guys who you would consider maybe a little bit later outside of the top 50. And then I think the 2 prospects that probably stand out to me the most would be, are you taking a chance on a guy like Drew Allard just because he's got a lot of physical tools? The junior year from him at Penn State was pretty impressive. And I thought very highly of him. I think he was my QB2 going into the season because he had a really nice year the previous year. And I said, okay, well, if that's the building block and if we're only going to get better from that junior year going into his senior year, I feel pretty good about Drew Allard. But he didn't play as well. Penn State didn't play as well just overall as a team. And I think that his stock is more of that of an early day 3 type of a pick, but he's got a lot of really great tools. And then Cade Klubnik, I think, has shown over the last 3 seasons that he's got what it takes to be a pretty good game manager. He can be a good point guard of a quarterback for you, sort of that West Coast offense where you're just methodically marching things down the field a little bit more. Reading safeties and respecting the speed of safeties was an issue for him specifically this past season. That only gets more difficult as the safeties get more athletically talented at the NFL level. But I think those are maybe the 2 quarterbacks that would probably be next for me outside of Nussmeier, who you'd have to pick a little bit earlier.
You are the co-host of a very popular draft podcast alongside Connor Rogers named NFL Stock Exchange. Here, we like to call it Wheels Up, Wheels Down. So whose stock might be dropping? I'm going to flip the script a little bit. Let's talk about Wheels Down right now. Give me 2 prospects.
So this is a player that I feel just had some missed opportunities, and that is Peter Woods from Clemson. And he's somebody that I know has been mocked to the Jets at 16. I know I've seen him in mock drafts before just because he had the need for a defensive tackle. Now, we'll see sort of what that need and the priority of it is with T'Vondre Sweat on the team. But I thought it was a missed opportunity for Peter Woods. I really did, where he shows up with smaller arms, which we kind of expected. You can kind of see that in how he plays. And so the length's not ideal there for him. But then he shows up at sub 300 pounds. He showed up at 298 pounds from the combine, and he didn't test. Come on, if you're going to show up at less than 300 pounds, you got to test. I need you to fly, especially after a down year where people are questioning your overall athletic abilities. I needed to see him remind everybody that he's a good athlete because I still think that of his tape. But this was a major, major missed opportunity for him as somebody who I felt like should be in the first round conversation given his talent. But man, I was just I was disappointed with his combine, and I feel like it was a missed opportunity there for him. As for somebody else who was more of a stock down type of a player.
Well, let me ask you, I'm going to interject right here. Let me ask you about Malachi Fields, because a lot of people liked his Senior Bowl, and then there are people now knocking him for the 4.61 in Indy. But last season at Notre Dame, he's averaging 17.5 yards a reception.
Yeah, so this is a good one. This is a good one to point out because I think it's important to talk about the context when it comes to Malachi Fields. I thought that Malachi Fields was a really nice top 100 type of a wide receiver, especially after what I saw in person at the Senior Bowl. I felt like, hey, somewhere in the 80s, 90s would be a really good spot to get a wide receiver like this, who's good in contested catch situations. You mentioned really high average depth of target, was used as a vertical type of receiver. But then, man, after that Senior Bowl performance, I saw some people sneak him into the back end of the first round conversations. That's always been really rich to me because even though there were flashes of him as a straight line athlete, it was never consistent with him. And so I think that with him running the 40-yard dash of what he did, that was disappointing for a lot of people. But I kind of felt as though it was telling the story of what I've seen all along from his tape, not just this past year, but also going back to his time at Virginia. And when you look at his average depth of target being over 17 yards per catch, yes, they're utilizing him as a deep threat receiver, but it's much more so him getting vertical and then settling for those contested catch opportunities. Now, he's a great contested catch receiver, so he's coming down with those catches, and obviously that's why the average depth of target is up. But he's one who I think relative to where the hype train was going, he's a bit of a faller because that 40-yard dash brings him back to, I'll say like brings him back down to earth, but to be honest with you, brought him back down towards where I actually felt as though he should have been valued as a prospect all along. So this is still a good football player, somebody who can help out in offense, even from a vertical sense. But you're not thinking about this guy at the back end of the first round anymore after what he did in Indianapolis this past week.
All right, we're going to transition now to Wheels Up. Sonny Styles, we started the show talking about him. He's already at 50,000 feet right now, cruising altitude. He's got the turbojets on. So, Sonny aside, how about some guys whose stock is rising?
Yeah, so there's a handful of guys that I think really, really helped themselves last week. The first one is Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker from Texas Tech. This is one of the best linebackers in all of college football this past season, had the highest overall defensive grade of any Power 4 linebacker that we have ever recorded in a single season at PFF. Elite coverage grades, elite run defense grades, low missed tackles, low missed tackle percentage, 13 career forced fumbles, 6 career interceptions. I mean, he was all over the place, and the way that he played in coverage at the Senior Bowl was also really impressive because it was so smart how he was angling certain option routes to make it so these receivers and tight ends and running backs actually didn't have options. It was just one direction that they were going to be able to go because of how he angled himself, right? Think about in basketball when you know somebody's got a strong hand and a weak hand and you position yourself in a way where you make them dribble to their weak hand. That's essentially what Jacob Rodriguez was doing in coverage to a lot of these running backs and tight ends that he was going up against at the Senior Bowl. So he wins so much with IQ and how smart he is, but the question mark is he athlete enough to still be able to do that at the NFL level? He tested almost identically to the way that Luke Kuechly tested many years ago. Now, Kuechly went 10 overall. Jacob Rodriguez isn't going to go 10 overall because he was a little bit bigger when he was doing that. But I think Jacob Rodriguez is in that first round conversation. I think the same of Omar Cooper Jr., the wide receiver from Indiana, because he's the same thing. Really solid overall scouting report, 86.0 receiving grade this past season, really high yards per route run, sometimes played second fiddle to Elijah Surratt a little bit, but as that season went on, he continued to play his best against some of the best competition in all of college football. He's got the release packages. He knows how to create separation, but again, was he a good enough athlete? And I think with his 4.42 40-yard dash to around 200 pounds and his 37-inch vertical jump, yes, absolutely. He is athletic enough to be a really, really good wide receiver 2 and maybe even wide receiver 1 in some games, in some situations. So those are two guys who I think made themselves some money and got into the first round conversation.
All right, we're going to throw you the virtual whiteboard right now. You are in the Jets draft room. Who's your red star guy? Who's the prospect that the Jets have to select in this draft?
I think it might be Sonny Styles. Like, I really do. Again, like, I can't compare a guy to Fred Warner and then at number 2 overall be like, yeah, nah, let's pick an edge rusher instead. Like, if I honestly think that this guy has Fred Warner potential, it's so hard for me to not select him because Fred Warner goes in the 3rd round of his own draft. I mean, you do a redraft of that one. I don't know every pick of that draft class off the top of my head, but hard to believe that Fred Warner gets out of the top 3. And I think, again, we could be having the same conversation with Sonny Styles. So he is somebody that I think is sort of that red star type of a player for me, somebody that I really, really love in this class. I mean, Caleb Downs is somebody who I think is very similar in that regard where I think he is a total difference maker basically everywhere. He is somebody who I think is I really do believe he's can't miss because of the type of tape that he put out there over the last 3 years. I mean, he started as a true safety for Nick Saban. Who does that? Who starts as a freshman for Nick Saban? Nobody. So the list is single digit. You probably count them on one hand, the amount of guys that were able to do that. And Caleb Downs is one of them. So those two Ohio State guys, probably the red star. Got to have them if you have the opportunity to get them type of players.
It is time for Trevor Sikkema's 2-round Jets mock draft. The Green and White have 2 selections in round 1. a pair in round 2. 4 selections in the top 44 overall. Trevor, let's start with number 2.
I would take Sonny Styles here. If I was making the call, I would take Sonny Styles. Come off the conversation that we just said there, I think he totally changes everything that you are doing from a defensive perspective. He makes everyone around him better. He allows you to change your scheme, be more versatile with what you're doing. I'm gonna take Sonny Styles.
And that's a big time curveball because you took Arvell Reese actually on the pod. How about number 16 overall for the Jets?
Yeah, so when we were doing the podcast, that was a little bit more of a predictive what I kind of think will happen. But if we're doing a sort of what I would do here, Sonny Styles would have been my guy there. Mekhi Lemon is my guy at 16. If he is on the board there at number 16, I think this is the perfect complement to a Garrett Wilson. It allows you to use Garrett Wilson in basically any way you want to because of how versatile and how reliable Mekhi Lemon is. He can be that player who is consistently allowing you to get those catches on third down to move the chains, while Garrett Wilson can open things up a little bit deeper down the field, maybe like his former teammate Ohio State Chris Olave does quite a bit now with the New Orleans Saints. I can think of a great 1-2 combination there. I'd love to get a receiver at some point here, and I like the idea of picking Mekhi Lemon here at number 16.
Trevor, you have the first pick in round 2, number 33 overall.
Yeah, this is a fun one. Like if they have the opportunity to take like an Emmanuel McNeil-Warren at safety, like I think about him at 33. I mean, he could very well be a first-round pick. But man, I think that I go to safety. Like I go to safety in my mind because this safety class is so good. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, AJ Halsey, those are the 2 players that I think about. But let's just say Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Let's say that he gets somewhere around this range. They can get a difference-making safety on the back end, somebody who really, really knows how to do a lot of different things for him. He could play in the box. He could play cover 1 for you. He's all over the place. Let's go with Emmanuel McNeil-Warren here.
And lastly, 11 picks later, number 44 overall.
44 overall, I'm going to go with, because we have not taken a true edge rusher yet. We went Sonny Styles at 2. We went Mekhi Lemon at 16, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren at 33. I'm going to go with Malachi Lawrence, the edge rusher from UCF, here at number 44. His performance at the Combine, I think, puts him into this mid to late second round conversation. Had an elite pass rush grade this past season at UCF, a really deep pass rush bag from him. He is somebody who I think wins very well with speed, 40-inch vertical jump, 10-foot, 10-inch broad jump. I mean, the explosiveness is there for him. The length is there for him as well with over 33-inch arms. He is somebody who I think gives you that speed profile as an edge rusher that they could feel good about. So that's how I'm rounding this one out. I couldn't get out of here without drafting an edge rusher, but I think they get a really good one if they're taking him at 44.
All right, you can follow him at Tampa Bay Trey. Trevor Sikkema, you can read him at Pro Football Focus. And lastly, subscribe to that pod as well. NFL Stock Exchange podcast, man. You're doing a great job. Awesome analysis today.
I appreciate it, Eric. Anytime, my friend. Thank you.